The room was large, round, and filled with a soft hum of voices. Strange beings from across the galaxy sat in their seats, some floating, others standing tall on multiple legs. The air smelled faintly metallic, and lights flickered softly above. This was the Galactic Council Chamber, a place where decisions that affected millions of lives were made. Today, though, the mood was different. Tension hung thick, and everyone seemed to be talking about one thing: humans. Ambassador Alan Carter stood near the center of the room. He was a tall man with short gray hair and sharp eyes. His suit was plain but neat, a symbol of Earth's attempt to fit in among the dazzling outfits of other species. Alan had spent years trying to show the galaxy that humans were peaceful, but today felt like all his work might come crashing down. Rumors were spreading. Rumors that humanity wasn't just exploring space anymore. They were building weapons, expanding too fast, and stepping on toes they shouldn't have. "They're getting ready for war," whispered a green-skinned alien with wide, glowing eyes. "It's only a matter of time." Alan clenched his fists under the table. He wanted to shout back, to tell them they were wrong, but he knew better. Instead, he took a deep breath and focused on staying calm. Humans weren't perfect, sure, but they weren't monsters either. Still, the whispers kept coming. Far away from the council chamber, aboard a massive spaceship called the Eclipse, Captain Laura Hayes paced back and forth. She was a strong woman in her late 30s, with dark hair tied neatly behind her head. Her uniform was crisp, and her boots clicked sharply against the metal floor as she moved. Outside the ship's windows, stars stretched endlessly into the blackness of space. But instead of admiring the view, Laura was worried. Orders had come in earlier that morning, orders to prepare for possible conflict. Laura glanced at her crew. They were good people, loyal and skilled, but she could see the unease in their faces. None of them wanted a fight, not really. Yet here they were, stationed close to the edge of a region known as contested space, where tensions between species often flared. Laura knew this part of the galaxy well. It was rich in resources, valuable minerals, and energy sources, but it also belonged to no one, or so everyone claimed. Back on Earth, President Robert Elaine sat in her office, staring at a stack of reports on her desk. She was a middle-aged woman with curly brown hair and tired eyes. Being president wasn't easy, especially now. There were calls for action, demands for stronger defenses, and warnings from advisors who thought humanity needed to strike first before someone else did. On the other hand, there were protests outside her building, signs held up by citizens begging for peace. Roberta sighed and leaned back in her chair. Why did everything have to be so complicated? She picked up one of the reports and skimmed through it again. It detailed how human colonies had expanded further than ever before, sometimes without permission from nearby alien governments. Some even accused humans of taking land or resources unfairly. Was it true? Maybe partly, but did that mean war was inevitable? As these thoughts swirled in her mind, a knock came at the door. Her assistant peeked in. "Madam President," he said quietly, "the ambassador is requesting an urgent call." Roberta nodded. "Patch him through." Moments later, Alan's face appeared on the screen. His expression was grim. "Madam President," he began, "things are escalating faster than we expected. The Council, they're scared. If we don't act soon, I fear what might happen." Roberta listened carefully, her heart sinking. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, humanity's future was hanging by a thread, and she wasn't sure if anyone could stop it from unraveling. Years ago, humanity's journey into the stars began with excitement and wonder. When Earth first discovered faster-than-light travel, it felt like a dream come true. For centuries, people had looked up at the night sky, imagining what lay beyond. Now they could finally go there. At first, other species welcomed humans to the galactic community. They admired humanity's curiosity, creativity, and determination. But over time, that admiration turned into caution, and sometimes fear. Humans were different from most other species in the galaxy. While many aliens preferred slow, careful growth, humans rushed ahead without looking back. They explored new planets quickly, built colonies almost overnight, and claimed resources as if there was no tomorrow. This made some aliens nervous. To them, humans seemed reckless, unpredictable, and hungry for power. One of the earliest incidents happened when Commander Ryan Mitchell led a mission to destroy an asteroid heading toward Earth. The asteroid posed a serious threat, big enough to cause massive damage if it hit the planet. So, Ryan did what any human commander would do. He blew it up. The explosion saved Earth, but also destroyed something else: a sacred alien monument floating near the asteroid. The monument belonged to the Kryn, an insect-like species who viewed it as holy ground. When the debris scattered, so did their trust in humanity. That wasn't the only problem. Over time, more conflicts arose. Mining rights became a major issue. Humans found rich deposits of valuable minerals on uninhabited moons and started extracting them without asking permission from nearby alien governments. It's unclaimed territory, Earth's leaders argued. But to the aliens, it felt like theft. Cultural misunderstandings didn't help either. On one occasion, a human diplomat accidentally insulted a group of Valens, aquatic creatures known for their love of harmony. During a formal meeting, the diplomat offered them a gift, a clock shaped like Earth's sun. To humans, it symbolized time and progress. To the Valens, however, it represented arrogance and disrespect because they valued stillness and balance above all else. The incident caused weeks of tense negotiations. These events piled up, creating a growing sense of distrust. Each small clash added fuel to the fire until the flames grew too hot to ignore. Some aliens began to see humans not as partners, but as rivals, or even threats. Even those who liked humans couldn't deny their rapid expansion was unsettling. Back in the present, Ambassador Alan Carter thought about these moments as he sat in his quarters aboard the Council station. He remembered standing beside Ryan Mitchell during the fallout over the destroyed monument. He remembered arguing late into the night with Valen ambassadors after the clock fiasco. And now, here he was again, trying to smooth things over while whispers of war filled the air. On board the Eclipse, Captain Laura Hayes heard similar stories from her crew. Many of them had served long enough to witness humanity's mistakes firsthand. One sailor, Corporal Jake Thompson, often talked about how his uncle once worked on a mining project that angered the Vorik, a warrior race notorious for their short tempers. "We didn't mean harm," Jake would say, "but they saw us as invaders. Can you blame them?" Laura understood both sides. She knew humans weren't evil. They just acted differently than most species. Still, actions had consequences, and right now, those consequences loomed large. As she gazed out at the endless stars, she wondered if humanity would ever learn to tread lightly among them, or if its hunger for growth would always outweigh its desire for peace. Far away on Earth, President Robert Elaine read through old reports detailing each misstep humanity had taken. Every page reminded her of how fragile alliances could be. Yet, despite everything, she believed there was still hope. If humans could find a way to listen, to truly understand the concerns of others, maybe they could avoid disaster. But time was running out, and the galaxy wasn't patient. Captain Laura Hayes stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, staring at the holographic display in front of her. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the control panels. Her crew worked silently, their faces tense as they monitored the scanners. Something wasn't right. For days, there had been strange signals coming from nearby space, signals that didn't match any known alien frequencies. "Anything new?" Laura asked, turning to Lieutenant Daniel Brooks. He was a young man with short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. Normally calm and confident, he looked uneasy today. "Not yet, Captain," Daniel replied, his voice low. "But these readings, they're not random. Someone's out there, watching us." Laura nodded but didn't say anything. She trusted Daniel. He was one of her best officers, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this situation was more complicated than it seemed. Daniel's sister, Emily, was a xenobiologist who had spent years studying the Kryn, an insectoid species rumored to be secretly arming other factions against humanity. Some people thought the Kryn were behind the mysterious signals. Laura didn't want to believe it, but suspicion lingered in the back of her mind. Later that evening, Laura decided to review the data herself. Sitting alone in her quarters, she pulled up the encrypted files Daniel had flagged earlier. At first glance, they seemed harmless, just fragments of communication between distant ships. But as she pieced them together, a pattern emerged. Coordinates, timestamps, and coded messages hinted at something bigger, a plan to provoke humanity into conflict. Her heart raced as she realized what it meant. If the Kryn were truly involved, it could explain why tensions had risen so quickly. They might be using misinformation to turn other species against Earth. Laura knew she had to act fast, but before she could alert command, another message came through. This one was clearer than the rest and included a name: Lieutenant Daniel Brooks. Laura froze. Was Daniel part of this? She trusted him, but the evidence was hard to ignore. Taking a deep breath, she decided to confront him directly. The next morning, she called him to her office. "Daniel," she began, her tone firm but calm, "I need to ask you something. Do you know anything about these messages?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "Messages? What are you talking about?" Laura showed him the decrypted files. His face turned pale as he read through them. I don't understand," he stammered. "This isn't mine. I swear, Captain." For a moment, Laura hesitated. She wanted to believe him, but the stakes were too high. "Your sister works closely with the Kryn, doesn't she?" she pressed. "Yes, but she'd never do anything to hurt us," Daniel insisted. "She loves Earth as much as anyone here." Laura studied his expression. He looked scared, not guilty. Finally, she nodded. "All right. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But we need answers, and soon." Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel volunteered to investigate further. With Laura's permission, he reached out to Emily. Their conversation was brief but revealing. Emily admitted she'd heard rumors of rogue elements within the Kryn leadership plotting against humanity, but she swore she wasn't involved. Still, she promised to dig deeper and report back. As hours passed, the weight of the situation grew heavier. Laura couldn't help but wonder how many others might be playing both sides. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. And in a galaxy full of secrets, loyalty felt like a fragile thread ready to snap at any moment. Meanwhile, Ambassador Alan Carter faced his own challenges. Rumors of betrayal spread quickly among the Galactic Council, fueling accusations against humanity. Every attempt he made to defend Earth was met with skepticism. Frustrated but determined, Alan vowed to find proof of innocence, or at least clarity, in a sea of confusion. The pieces of the puzzle were scattered, and time was running out. Both Laura and Alan knew that if they failed, war might become unavoidable. The cracks in humanity's alliances were growing wider with each passing day. On board the Eclipse, Captain Laura Hayes watched as reports came in about the Valens withdrawing their support. The aquatic species have been one of Earth's strongest allies, known for their peaceful nature and willingness to mediate conflicts. But now, they announced they could no longer stand by humanity's side. Their leader, a shimmering being named Zalora, released a statement saying that Earth's actions had made them too unpredictable to trust. Laura felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She knew what this meant: more isolation, more suspicion. Without allies like the Valens, humanity was dangerously exposed. Back on Earth, protests erupted in cities across the globe. People filled the streets, holding signs and chanting slogans. Some demanded action, calling for humanity to defend itself no matter the cost. Others begged for peace, warning that war would only lead to destruction. The divide between these two groups grew deeper every day, tearing communities apart. In the middle of all this chaos stood journalist Samantha Perry, a determined woman in her early 30s with curly red hair and sharp green eyes. Samantha had always believed in seeking the truth. For weeks, she'd been investigating rumors of secret military operations led by General William Grant, a hawkish figure within Earth's government. His name came up repeatedly in conversations with sources, soldiers, diplomats, even low-level engineers. They all hinted at something big, something hidden. Samantha spent long nights piecing together clues. Finally, she uncovered evidence that shocked her. Documents proving General Grant had authorized covert missions to test advanced weapons near alien territories. These tests weren't just reckless. They were deliberate provocations designed to intimidate other species. Worse still, some of the missions had gone horribly wrong, leading to civilian casualties among neighboring alien populations. Her hands trembled as she typed up her article. This wasn't just news. It was a bombshell. If people saw this, it could change everything. Early the next morning, her expose went live online. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across screens worldwide. General Grant's secret war plans expose. Citizens were outraged. Protesters who had once called for war began questioning their stance, while those advocating for peace felt vindicated. President Robert Elaine sat in her office, staring at the headlines on her tablet. Her face was pale, her jaw clenched tight. She hadn't known about Grant's operations, not officially, anyway. Now, the entire galaxy seemed to think she did. Calls poured in from ambassadors, demanding answers. Even Alan Carter reached out, his voice tense over the comlink. "Madam President," he said urgently, "you need to address this. The Council is losing faith fast." Roberta nodded, though he couldn't see her. "I know," she replied quietly. "Believe me, I know." That evening, she ordered General Grant arrested for treason. It was a bold move, one that sent shockwaves through both Earth and the Galactic Council. Some praised her decision, calling it a step toward accountability. Others accused her of weakness, claiming she bowed to pressure instead of standing firm. Amidst the turmoil, Ambassador Alan Carter tried desperately to salvage what remained of humanity's reputation. At the council chamber, he faced a barrage of questions and accusations. Aliens shouted over each other, pointing fingers at Earth. One ambassador, a tall reptilian creature with glowing orange eyes, slammed his fist on the table. "You humans are impossible," he hissed. "How can we trust you when your own leaders betray you?" Alan took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "We are not perfect," he admitted, "but we are trying." Arresting General Grant proves that. His words didn't satisfy everyone, but they gave some pause. Perhaps there was still hope for diplomacy, if humanity could prove it truly meant to change. Back on the Eclipse, Laura Hayes read Samantha's article with mixed feelings. Part of her admired the journalist's courage, but another part worried about the fallout. Revealing such secrets might bring justice, but it also risked pushing humanity closer to war. As the ship drifted silently through space, Laura couldn't help but wonder, was peace still possible, or had the cracks grown too wide to mend? The attack came without warning. A human outpost on the edge of contested space, known as Delta 7, was suddenly engulfed in flames. The small station, home to scientists and engineers studying nearby asteroid fields, had no defensive weapons. Within minutes it was gone, leaving behind only debris and silence. No survivors, no distress signal, just destruction. News of the attack spread quickly across the galaxy. The Galactic Council erupted into chaos. Accusations flew in every direction, but one name kept coming up: the Vorak. The warrior race, known for their aggression and territorial nature, seemed like the obvious culprit. Ambassador Alan Carter stood in the council chamber, his face pale but determined. He demanded answers, urging the Vorak representative to deny involvement. "We did not do this," growled the Vorak ambassador, a hulking figure with jagged armor and glowing red eyes. His voice was deep and guttural, vibrating through the room. "This is your doing, human. You provoke us, then blame us when things go wrong." Alan clenched his fists but kept his tone steady. "If you're innocent, help us find who's responsible. This kind of attack threatens everyone." But few believed him. Whispers filled the chamber, blaming humanity for staging the attack themselves to justify retaliation. Tensions reached a boiling point, and Alan realized he was losing control of the situation. Humanity's reputation, already fragile, was crumbling before his eyes. Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse, Captain Laura Hayes received orders to investigate the wreckage. She led her crew cautiously toward Delta 7, scanning the area for clues. As they approached the remains of the outpost, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The damage didn't match typical Vorik tactics. They were brutal but rarely subtle. This attack had been precise, almost surgical. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks worked tirelessly at his console, analyzing fragments of data recovered from the debris field. Hours passed before he found something unusual: a rogue drone, damaged but still transmitting faint signals. Its design was unfamiliar, unlike anything used by the Vorik or other known species. "Captain," Daniel said, his voice low and urgent, "you need to see this." Laura hurried over, her brow furrowing as she studied the drone's encrypted logs. With some effort, Daniel managed to decode parts of the transmission. What they discovered shocked them both. The drone carried orders written in human code, not military standard, but something older, linked to classified projects. The coordinates matched locations near General Grant's covert operations. Laura's stomach churned. "This wasn't the Vorik," she muttered. "It was one of ours." Daniel looked sickened. Someone inside humanity wanted this to happen, to make it look like the Vorik attacked us. The implications were staggering. If true, it meant rogue elements within Earth's own ranks were trying to push the galaxy into war. Laura knew she had to report her findings immediately, but she also feared how people would react. Trust in humanity's leadership was already at an all-time low. Revealing this betrayal could destroy what little goodwill remained. Back on Earth, President Robert Elaine faced mounting pressure. Protesters outside her office chanted for justice, while world leaders argued over how to respond. When Laura's report arrived, Roberta read it in stunned silence. Her hands trembled as she set it down. Someone had orchestrated this catastrophe, and they were still out there. Summoning her advisors, Roberta made a decision. She called an emergency broadcast, addressing not just Earth but the entire galaxy. Standing tall despite her exhaustion, she spoke clearly and firmly. "We have uncovered evidence suggesting that the attack on Delta 7 was not carried out by the Vorik or any alien species. It was an act of sabotage by rogue operatives within our own forces. I promise you, we will find those responsible and bring them to justice." Her words echoed across star systems, met with disbelief and cautious hope. For the first time in weeks, the tide of anger began to shift. Perhaps humanity wasn't entirely to blame, but the road to redemption would be long and difficult. As Laura gazed out at the stars from the bridge of the Eclipse, she wondered if trust could ever truly be rebuilt. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would come next. The galaxy was holding its breath, and time was running out. Ambassador Alan Carter knew that if nothing changed, war would become inevitable. Sitting in his quarters aboard the Council station, he stared at a map of the galaxy projected on the wall. Lines marked borders, contested zones, and neutral territories. His eyes lingered on one spot, a small, unassuming space station called Nexus 9. It was owned by no single species and used for trade and diplomacy. An idea began to form in his mind. Alan reached out to President Robert Elaine, explaining his plan. "We need to show the galaxy we're serious about peace," he said firmly. "Let's invite neutral parties to mediate talks aboard Nexus 9. If we can get everyone in the same room, maybe we can find common ground." Roberta hesitated but eventually agreed. "Do it," she said, "but make sure it's secure. We can't afford another disaster. With the president's approval, Alan worked tirelessly to organize the meeting. He contacted representatives from neutral species, the Luminix, who glowed softly like living stars, and the Arathis, tall beings with translucent skin. Both agreed to help, seeing the value in preventing a galactic war. The Vorik were reluctant, but finally accepted the invitation after assurances they wouldn't be blamed outright. Captain Laura Hayes volunteered to escort the delegation to Nexus 9. Despite the risks, she felt it was her duty to ensure safe passage. As the Eclipse prepared to leave, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks approached her. "I want to come with you," he said. "I owe it to everyone to prove I'm not part of this conspiracy." Laura studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but stay sharp. This won't be easy." The journey to Nexus 9 was tense. Every sensor reading, every shadow in space made the crew uneasy. At one point, an unknown ship appeared on their scanners, moving erratically. Laura ordered Red Alert, readying weapons just in case, but after several tense minutes, the ship vanished as quickly as it had come. No one could explain what it was or why it had been there. When they arrived at Nexus 9, the station looked peaceful enough, floating silently against a backdrop of swirling nebulae. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the main hall, their varied forms creating a surreal scene. Some floated, others walked on multiple legs, and a few communicated through shimmering lights instead of words. Tension filled the air, but there was also a flicker of hope. During the talks, accusations flew freely. The Vorik denied responsibility for the attack on Delta 7, while other species accused humanity of arrogance and deceit. Alan listened patiently, interjecting only when necessary to keep the discussion from collapsing entirely. Slowly, progress began to emerge. Neutral mediators suggested compromises, such as shared control over contested areas and stricter oversight of military activities. Back on Earth, journalist Samantha Perry published another article, this time focusing on stories of cooperation between humans and aliens throughout history. Her words resonated deeply, reminding people that trust could be rebuilt if given a chance. Protesters outside government buildings began carrying signs calling for unity instead of division. Amidst all this, Laura and Daniel grew closer. Working together under pressure forged a bond between them. One night, as they stood on the observation deck of the Eclipse, gazing at the stars, Daniel admitted his fears. "What if we fail?" he asked quietly. "We won't," Laura replied, her voice steady. "Even if it takes years, we'll keep trying. That's what makes us human." By the end of the talks, a fragile agreement was reached. Humanity agreed to scale back its presence in contested zones and submit to regular inspections by the Galactic Council. In return, other species promised greater transparency and cooperation. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As the delegates departed, Alan allowed himself a small smile. Peace was possible, but it would require constant effort. For now, though, the galaxy could breathe a little easier. The peace talks ended with a fragile agreement, but no one celebrated. The delegates left Nexus 9 quietly, their expressions a mix of relief and unease. Ambassador Alan Carter watched them go, his shoulders heavy with the weight of what had been accomplished, or perhaps what hadn't. He knew this truce was just the beginning. Trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight, not after everything that had happened. Still, for the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope. Back aboard the Eclipse, Captain Laura Hayes stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. Her crew worked silently around her, resetting systems and preparing for the journey home. The mission had been dangerous, exhausting, and far from perfect. But they'd done it. They'd kept the galaxy from tipping into war, at least for now. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks walked up beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. "Do you think it'll hold?" he asked softly. Laura didn't answer right away. She thought about all the mistakes humanity had made, the lives lost, and the bridges burned. "I don't know," she admitted finally, "but we have to try. If we stop trying, Then we've already lost. Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. For days, he carried the guilt of being suspected of betrayal. Now, though, he felt a small sense of redemption. Helping uncover the truth about Delta 7 and escorting the delegation to Nexus 9 had shown him that even in the darkest times, people could still choose to do the right thing. On Earth, President Robert Elaine addressed the nation from her office. Cameras captured every line on her face, every flicker of emotion as she spoke. Behind her, a large window showed the curve of the planet below, a reminder of what was at stake. "My fellow citizens," she began, her voice steady but warm, "today marks a new chapter for us. We have taken steps toward peace, but let me be clear. This is not the end. It is only the start. Mistakes have been made by our leaders, by our military, and by all of us. But we are learning. And if we continue to listen, to understand, and to work together, I believe we can build a better future." Her words resonated across the globe. Some people cheered, while others remained skeptical. Samantha Perry, the journalist who had exposed General Grant's schemes, wrote another article praising the president's honesty. "War may have been avoided," she wrote, "but peace requires effort. Let's not waste this chance." In the days that followed, life began to return to normal, or as close to normal as it could get. Protests died down, replaced by community meetings aimed at fostering understanding between humans and aliens living on Earth. Schools started teaching courses about intergalactic diplomacy, emphasizing the importance of cooperation over conflict. Even so, challenges remained. Rogue elements within humanity still existed, angry and bitter about the compromises made at Nexus 9. Some alien species continued to eye Earth with suspicion, waiting for the next misstep. And the memory of Delta 7 lingered, a painful reminder of how quickly trust could shatter. Despite these obstacles, progress was visible. Trade routes reopened, allowing goods and ideas to flow freely once again. Scientists from different species collaborated on projects, sharing knowledge and building connections. Slowly, the galaxy began to heal. As the eclipse approached Earth, Laura gathered her crew for a final briefing. "This wasn't easy," she said, looking at each of them in turn. "And it won't always be easy moving forward. But remember this, we chose to fight for peace instead of war. That matters." Her words hung in the air, simple yet powerful. When the ship landed, the crew disembarked with a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just soldiers or sailors. They were ambassadors of hope, proof that even in the vastness of space, humanity could find a way to coexist. Far above, the stars twinkled brightly, indifferent to the struggles below. Yet among those stars, scattered across planets and ships and stations, beings of all kinds dared to dream of a brighter tomorrow. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, the galaxy dared to believe that peace was possible.